says 50. And remember the piston itself, that said how much? 5. So altogether I should have 55. Now what I'll do is I'll crank this in, and I see the needle start to rise. So far no motion on the primary piston. It's going up, it's going up. What I'm doing is I'm squeezing the air bubbles that happen to be in here. And as soon as I get around 55 psi, now my primary piston rises up. Now I give it a little bit of a spin, and it coasts a whole lot better now because it's got a lot more mass sitting there. And look at where it sits. Remember, each minor division of this gauge is 5 psi. There's 50 psi, there's 55, so we're just a little bit over 55, maybe a couple psi high. So far so good? All right. So I'm going to gently place another 50 psi weight. Remember what Pascal's law says. With every increment, with every extra increment of pressure we add to the system, it gets felt throughout. So if I add another 50 psi worth of pressure here, the gauge should see another 50 psi. But notice my piston's all the way down at the bottom. I have to crank it in again. I have to compress the air bubbles that are in the system until finally it rises up. There. Give it a little spin so it breaks free of any friction. And now I'm reading, it should be how much? 105, exactly. Looking at this again, I've got 100 psi, 105, and we're just a couple psi over. So we're consistently a little bit high on this gauge. Not bad. Maybe 2 psi out of its range. And given it's a 300 psi range there, being off by 2 psi is less than 1%. That's not doing too bad. Okay, I can continue with this as well. Notice, however, it looks like my piston's settling down a little bit. I probably have a little bit of a leak in the system. It could be anywhere. It could be in this valve here. It could be in a leaky fitting. Can't really tell. I can see a little bit of oil leaking down this tube, so maybe one of my fittings here isn't tight. So what I'm going to do now is see how far my secondary piston is in. I can't really go in much further before I bottom out. So what I'm going to do here, let it bottom out. I will open the reservoir valve and get a fresh load of oil in the cylinder. I'll freshly charge that secondary cylinder. It's sucking oil from the reservoir into that chamber. Now I'll close the reservoir valve. Now when I start squeezing the oil into it, I've got like a new start. And now I should be able to get my pressure built up. There we go. So now I've got a few more threads showing here. I've got a little bit more room to go. I don't have to spin this very fast. All I'm doing is spinning it just enough to break free of friction, so it's truly floating on the oil. And when I do that, I'll get a nice accurate pressure. Now remember the question we had before we went to break. What was the question?